Secretary.
Who is your secretary?
You're looking at Red Dawn. San Diego County Gun Owners and Gun Owners Radio might never have existed. On the line is a fellow Wolverine, Jamie Franks, to talk about this influential movie with me.
But we need to thank Joe Wall Design for helping to make our Plot Against the President movie night so successful. I wanted that 308 bullet pennant. It was a big hit. I really wanted it, and I didn't get it. But hey, the neat thing about the firearms-inspired jewelry is that they are conversation starters. Some of their pieces are based on triggers, firing pins, bolt heads, as well as bullets. And if you're not into guns, you probably wouldn't recognize what they are. But the jewelry is so distinct and striking that you just can't help but want to ask about it. So visit them at joewalldesign.com. Use code PLOT to get a $20 off your first order over $50.
All right, so we have pro shooter, shooting instructor, active duty military, outdoorsman, and Red Dawn superfan, Jamie Franks on the line. How are you, Jamie?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
Good. Fantastic. So we, it was, I don't know when it was, a year ago, 2 years ago, you and I start talking about Red Dawn. And everybody in our age bracket, which is, basically anybody born in, about mid-60s to about 1980, if you're an American male born in that age bracket, you saw Red Dawn, and you didn't just see it, but I swear it had some kind of impact on your life. That's not really an understatement. But you and I got to talking about Red Dawn, and you talked about what a huge impact it had on your life. And who you are and your military service. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I always start by saying that the biggest disservice or injustice that people do to Red Dawn is they lump it in with the other kind of cheesy 80s action movies that came out at the time. And I'm not even really sure I would classify it as an action movie per se. It's more of a drama movie. But my grandfather was in World War II, and Red Dawn came out in 1984. So at about that time, my granddaddy gave me his what we now would call a war belt or a battle belt, but his pistol belt from World War II that had his canteen and pistol holster and field dressing pouch and all that stuff on it, and it said U.S. on it. And I remember, I didn't, at that time, I was a little kid, I didn't know what U.S. meant. I'm like, Granddaddy, what does U.S. mean? And he's like, U.S. means you're the good guys. and that was about the same time Red Dawn came out. And, the really overarching theme of that whole movie is just extreme patriotism. These kids were so patriotic. They were caught in the middle of this invasion, and their very first instinct was, we got to fight back. And, and hopefully I'm not skipping ahead, but there's the kind of one of the climactic scenes in the movie where they have the Russian prisoner, and they say, what's the difference between them and us? And Jed replies, because we live here. And so between my grandfather and really, honestly, and the movie Red Dawn, really instilled a deep sense of patriotism in me at a really early age.
So Red Dawn...
Really,
I'm sorry. Red Dawn, first movie rated... Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was going to say that it's not even a stretch for me to say that the movie Red Dawn heavily contributed to the man that I became and the man that I am today. But.
Yeah, factual. Absolutely. And you're not the only person. I run into people all the time who say that, who again are in our age bracket. Okay, so Red Dawn, first movie rated PG-13. For a long time considered the most violent movie ever made because of the acts of violence per minute or whatever were through the roof. There's a lot of debate. Do you consider Red Dawn an anti-war or a pro-war movie?
I definitely don't consider it a pro-war movie. I think it's very accurate in its depiction of war in that it illustrates the point that war is not fun and war is not glorious, and no matter which side you're on, because they show that at the end of Red Dawn as well, that for the occupying force, for the Russians and the Cubans, it sucks for them too. It's terrible for all the Americans that are living through this, in our own land, but it also sucks when you're the soldier that's on deployment fighting a war in some other country. So it illustrates the point that no matter which side you're on, war isn't fun and war isn't good and war isn't glorious. And really, it kind of goes back to like what Sun Tzu and von Clausewitz, like really nobody wins a war when you fight a war. So if I had to pick between pro and anti, I guess I would pick anti, but definitely not pro. But I've always loved that it illustrates that war is not fun and not cool, and really it's horrible for both sides.
That movie has led to, I have a kind of a little philosophy that war is the result of a failing foreign policy. If your foreign policy has failed, that results in war. War is not foreign policy; it is the result of a failed foreign policy, and it gets a lot of criticism for being pro. For trying to glorify war, and I think it's the exact opposite. In fact, I just not long ago somebody made the statement that it was kind of Lord of the Flies. It was a modern day Lord of the Flies, and they just kind of said it off the cuff, but it got me thinking. It's the exact opposite. Lord of the Flies was a movie where the adults died and they're in this situation and all these kids fell apart and turned into chaos. Whereas I think Red Dawn is the exact opposite. They were escaping problems created by adults, and it actually brought out a more mature side of them. They said, all right, well, we have to handle this. We have to do this ourselves. They didn't fall apart. They actually organized and became better. They became more responsible. They became more self-sufficient. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's absolutely right. I've never actually thought about it in those terms before, but you're right. They came together and kind of with no other choice. But like, if you want to talk about a modern day Lord of the Flies, the movie Taps with Tom Cruise and Timothy Hutton and Sean Penn, that would be a modern day Lord of the Flies. And there's a good line in that movie where the commander of the National Guard or whatever, he says, some silly son of a bitch put you guys in love with war. Yeah. That's more Lord of the Flies. Like in Red Dawn, they weren't in love with war. They weren't doing it because they were trying to glorify war or because they were trying to be heroes. They were just trying to do what they thought was right. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that.
Well, and to your point on it's not just some silly action movie. I mean, there was a whole scene where the Cuban commander, because the invading force were Soviet Russians and communist Cubans, and the Cuban commander, there was a whole scene where he was, you were basically hearing his inner monologue. He was writing a letter to his wife describing how horrible it was and exactly what you're saying, how horrible it is to be deployed overseas in another country and you're an invading force, and how he missed her. And you don't see that in a Schwarzenegger movie. You didn't see that in a Stallone movie. I mean, this was not some superhero blood and guts and gore thing. I mean, this is a real true drama. I'd also heard that he actually spoke to, he being the writer and director was a guy named John Milius. Who, if you've heard at least one episode of Gun Owners Radio, you've heard me talk about John Milius. He actually spoke to some pretty high level military folks, and talked about this and said, hey, what's the most realistic invasion scenario? And that's what they came up with, was these Cuban and Russian special forces splitting the nation in two. But tell me, what's the most important thing? Do you remember when you saw it? Like, how did it affect you? Like, what's a direct way it truly affected you and put you on a path as a kid?
So for me, like, again, Red Dawn does such a good job at establishing a backstory, and then you don't find out you find out the backstory and then the beginning, and then they don't fill in the middle part until they kind of take in the Colonel Tanner after he's shot down, and then he fills in more of the backstory, and that there were these small nuclear strikes on all these U.S. cities and stuff, and it kind of paints the bigger picture for you, and you can kind of put the rest of the pieces of the puzzle in place. But Red Dawn does such a good job at character development and the backstory and everything. Like when they were in the beginning, they just wanted to hide out. They just wanted to lay low, and this whole thing's going to blow over, and then we'll be able to go back home or whatever. But then when they watched their own parents being executed,
changed everything.
They realized number one, I think, they want revenge for their parents being murdered. And then number two, they realize that if we don't do something, we're going to be the next ones that get shot, And so their back's against the wall, so they decide to use the tools that they have at their disposal and their background in hunting and all that stuff. But for me, I've always had this mentality, and I hope more young people today will develop this mentality too. But it's like, if somebody invades our country or somebody attacks our country, somebody has to do something about it. And that's kind of what I saw in Red Dawn, and I was like, I want that to be me. And so that, to speak to what you just said, I mean, that's really what put me on the path. And like, to quote Jocko Willink, when I was 18, I didn't want to go to college. I wanted a machine gun. And it's like, I was put on that path by watching Red Dawn.
Yeah, that was another way. It's different from just a shoot 'em up movie. Is there were a lot of little small themes, like kind of these subplots or these themes throughout the movie. Like when all these kids did go out into the woods and they were kind of going, hey, what do we do now? There was a physical, a literal conflict between the student body president and then the guy Jed, played by Patrick Swayze. Where basically, it looked like just two guys, duking it out. But if you dig a little deeper, the student body president really represented, politicians and government, and Jed represented, pragmatism and self-reliance. And so it was a literal conflict between the two in that they were, throwing punches. But it really kind of set this tone and was an underlying theme in the movie that, hey, you eggheads running the government here, you guys screwed up. You guys have totally messed up. You're not protecting us. In fact, you put us in harm's way due to your ridiculous policies. So now it's time for, pragmatism to take over. It's time for self-reliance to take over. And, at 10 or 11 or whatever, I don't know how much that occurred to me, but the theme definitely stuck with me. So, I think that's another reason that this movie was so influential to so many people. Okay, hold on the line, Jamie. We're going to talk about this on the other side of the commercial.
Yeah, popcorn's almost ready. Blackhound Optics. Accurate, affordable, guaranteed sporting optics that go the distance. Backed by customer service that goes that extra mile. Great guys, great products, and a great company that is making optics affordable. On top of quality optics, they pay close attention to the customer experience. And did you know their scopes come with mounts? So you don't have to worry about finding one that fits. We are so excited to have them on, an official partner for the show. Ask for them at your local gun store or find them online at blackhoundoptics.com.
All right, we're talking to Jamie Franks, who is a gentleman, a scholar, and a fine judge of Scotch. And, of course, we're talking about the classic movie Red Dawn. I want to clarify here, we're not talking about the Red Dawn that came out a few years ago. In fact,
I didn't even see it.
Yeah, well,
I saw it.
Oh my gosh, I don't like to acknowledge it existed.
I like to think that Josh Peck does not exist either, but he's a terrible actor, anyways.
Well, this movie was really, really hard. Jamie, did you see the remake? Do you even exist? Do you acknowledge the existence of the remake?
I did go see it and then have not acknowledged it since then. I mean, amongst my group of friends, there was no way I could get away with not going to see it, so I did, yeah.
Yeah, I saw about the first half or three quarters of it, and they didn't get it. They just didn't get it, because that really was a stupid, summer blockbuster, just blow them up, movie. I mean, they didn't get it at all. They didn't get anything right as far as the complexities and themes and stories from the original. I mean, it was enormously bad.
Mike, how do you really feel about it?
I know, right? Yeah,
no kidding.
Just pouring on. Something interesting is originally the bad guys, the invading force in the remake, were supposed to be the Chinese, and they asked the original director John Milius about it, and he went on this whole dissertation on how ridiculous that was because the Chinese have never invaded anything. That they in fact built a wall to stop people from invading them. That they're so the idea of the Chinese invading the United States was was absolutely ridiculous. But apparently the marketing, they wanted to sell this movie in China, and so they went back and digitally changed all the Chinese soldiers and turned them into North Koreans, right? Isn't that what happened? Did you hear about that, Jamie?
Yep, and that's during that same time. That's when MGM was going through bankruptcy. So the second Red Dawn almost didn't come out, but they already had it in the can, except for they had to go back and change all the markings on all the military vehicles, all the markings on the uniforms, all the markings on the airplanes, and make it all North Korean. Yeah.
And still, it was never released in China anyway. So,
well, fortunate for the Chinese. Because it was just a bummer. It was a bummer. They totally ruined the movie. So talk about what favorite scene from Red Dawn. What was your favorite scene in that movie?
Of the original?
Yeah, the original. Oh yeah, we're only talking. So from here on out, we're only talking original.
Well, just one more point on the new one. Like
Sure.
One of the most frustrating things for me is when somebody makes something. I mean, a gun or a scope or whatever, and it's like 75% of where it needs to be. Like, I would rather it be a complete piece of crap than 75% there. And there really was some good stuff in the new one, but like you said, they just totally missed the mark. You know, like in the 80s when all the kids were like these strong football jocks, and, you know, today a lot of kids aren't like that anymore. So instead of going toe-to-toe with the Russians, or with the North Koreans, they built IEDs, which a lot of kids today are more tech-savvy than we would have been in 1984. So they did do a lot of things that could have been a good thing, but it derailed and it turned it into just a complete dirty diaper. But my favorite scene in the original Red Dawn is I do like the scene in the snow. Red Dawn's such a smart movie, so I like all the parts that it fills in the story, like when they go to see Mr. Mason and when they take in Colonel Tanner. But I like the scene in the snow where they're ambushing the Russian troops, because it illustrates a whole bunch of things, right? Kind of what you were going into before about the politician. You know, the mayor's son snuck away from the group at some point and got caught and got talked into swallowing a tracking device, which then they used. But even still, the Wolverines were able to outsmart the troops and figure out that they were coming and set up an ambush and gain the upper hand. And then of course, they capture the tracking device, and they find out that Daryl, had swallowed a bug. And then that's when I was a kid. That's when I learned what it meant to be a traitor. I had to ask my dad, like, hey, they just shot this guy that was their friend. Why did they do that? And he's like, 'cause that's what you do to traitors. But I like that scene, that the snow ambush scene, because I think there's a lot of it's a good action scene, and there's a lot of depth there.
That's interesting. I personally, so John Milius is well known for even more than a director. He's well known for being a writer, and he's particularly good at writing dialogue. And he wrote a lot of dialogue for Lucas and Spielberg and Coppola, and he was really well known for kind of writing these. These big speeches, or these soliloquies for strong characters. And if you look at a lot of his movies, The Wind and The Lion, which is about Teddy Roosevelt had a lot of these really strong speeches. And I guess I learned in the documentary about John Milius that Sean Connery wasn't going to do The Hunt for Red October until he found out that John Milius was going to write the dialogue, and that's what brought him onto that picture. So he was really, truly well known for that. And my favorite scene was when Jed and his brother, it was Charlie Sheen and Patrick Swayze, went to the concentration camp, or the re-education camp, and found their dad. Yep. And the dad gave this really, really, hardcore speech on how important, how he's like, look, I was rough on you, but now you know why, and it's one of the more popular, more quoted. And I forget that character actor, but that dude is solid in every movie he's ever done. But he, yells out, "Avenge me!" when they leave, and it was just he did a really good job of kind of explaining, the points that he was trying to make, and without really even having to beat you over the head with it. Just the dialogue was really, really well done. But I thought that movie, 12-year-old or however 12-year-old Mike Schwartz was moved. That was it. All right, I got to go find a stick that looks like a gun. I got to go find a pine cone that looks like a hand grenade, and I got to go fight some commies here in North Florida, in the deep woods of North Florida.
there's so many powerful scenes like that, and like I said, and there's something you can get to piece together the whole picture from every scene. Like, you know, in the very beginning when they tell him to go to the sporting goods store and get all the firearm sales records, and then, like you said, the scene where the Cuban colonel's writing a letter to his wife, and the scene at the re-education camp, the scene after, because for a while the Wolverines are on a hot streak. They're executing all these guerrilla tactics perfectly and doing all these ambushes and all these hit and runs, and they even did a hostage rescue, and they never took any casualties. And then the very first time they take a casualty, like half of the dudes are like, okay, I'm out, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing that happens too, you know?
Well, and he was on the board of directors for the NRA. So that was another theme in the movie. When the Russians and Cuban leaders are talking to each other, they said, yeah, go to the sporting goods store and pull the, Melissa, what's the form? The federal form? Firearms
4473.
The 4473.
4473.
Yeah, go pull that form because that's registration. So if you know everybody that's going to have guns, he was making a point there. He's making a point about registration. And then if you look when they visited the guy that gave him supplies, they handed, you know, he said, here, let me take your guns, and he checked this, you know, he checked the action to see. It's all you know, subtle, but. He's a huge gun guy, John Milius, the writer-director. You know, like I said, served on the NRA board of directors. But that was another enormous theme, was how important gun ownership is, particularly in free America.
Yeah, and again, these little nuggets that are hidden there, like when they go see Mr. Mason and he chamber checks the rifle and all that stuff, and he starts asking them questions, and Robert speaks up. Oh yeah, we got this person. There's 7 of us, and it's really, you almost miss it. You got to look quick, but like Matt kicks him under the table and basically telling him to shut up because, you know, all of our families have been rounded up. Why has this guy not been rounded up? We don't know if we can trust this guy or not. So like I said, these little things are hidden all the way through the movie that are brilliant.
I agree. So, you know, back in, I don't know if I ever told you this, but back in 2013, I think it was, my brother was moving from California to Florida, and I said, here, I'll drive with you on one condition. We have to go through Las Vegas, New Mexico. There's a Las Vegas, New Mexico, and it's this little town where Red Dawn was filmed. So, and he was like, why are we doing that? And I told him why. And he's like, that's ridiculous. I say, hey, that's my condition. We got to go. So we actually stayed in the hotel where the crew stayed, which also happened to be the hotel where No Country for Old Men, they have a shot there as well. So it's kind of got a double whammy. But it was amazing. Jamie, if you've never been, got to go as soon. And I was thinking to myself, well, I wonder if I'm going to, like, how am I going to know where everything was filmed? And I wonder if they sell like a map or something like that. Pulled into town, it was totally obvious. Oh my gosh, stop right there. This is where they had that one scene. Oh, hey, this is the park where they said this. And then the guy said that. And then they said that. And I was a ridiculous dork the entire weekend. But the train station, you know, where they had the big fight at the end and everything, it was really, really amazing.
Did your brother leave you there and you had to come home on a Greyhound?
Just about. And it was even better. The night we pulled in, beautiful weather. It was a little cold. It was in the fall. And then it snowed like 3 or 4 inches. So the next day, woke up, boom, it was all covered in snow. So I got to see, you know, it was really.
So you put your camos on and went crawling around.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole town is, they're still, they love that movie. I mean, there are actually hundreds of movies shot in this little town, and they're in love. But they're a Red Dawn town. They're in love with Red Dawn. They still talk about it. The locals, it's still, you know, for whatever reason, for some reason, this movie just struck such a chord with so many people.
So how many at this table have not seen the movie?
Joe,
Oh, Desi didn't see it.
Can you count bits and pieces? I don't think I've ever sat through the whole thing.
Okay, so
I think I've seen a little bit of it.
I've seen it, and you know what? Let me tell you this. That movie was the pinnacle, like, turning point for being a woman for me. I saw it as a little kid, but I was like, you know what? Jennifer Grey, what was her name in the movie? Jennifer Grey.
Yeah.
Tony.
Okay, yeah, Tony. She was a strong woman, and I was like, she ponied up when she needed to. She put her big girl panties on, and she got the job done. So that's what I thought. I was like, you know what? I want to be like that too.
All right, Desi, you got homework.
I'll be watching it tonight. Don't worry.
I had a funny feeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of fame. I mean, so that was Jennifer Grey from Dirty Dancing, and the other girl at the time was what's her name from Back to the Future, the mom,
Leah Thompson.
Yeah.
Leah Thompson, and then
Thompson.
Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen and C. Thomas Howell. Anyway,
Thomas Howell.
gotta watch it. That's everybody's homework assignment. Check out Red Dawn. Excellent movie.
Thanks a
Jamie,
lot,
thank you
Jamie.
so much, man.
So
Yeah, you're welcome.
So does Charlie Sheen get drunk in that movie?
No, but Charlie Sheen, he goes. Actually, C. Thomas Howell gets real dark. Real dark. Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. You can watch us live every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, right here on our YouTube channel, or if you're in the San Diego area, you can listen to us on 1170 a.m. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform for free. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can help restore and protect the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.